Hello, I'm Dale Ahlquist, and welcome to the Apostle of Common Sense, a series of programs where we explore the words and wisdom of the great English writer G.K Chesterton. Heretics is one of Chesterton's most important books. It's also, for some reason, one of his most neglected books. Perhaps the reason has to do with the title. The word heretic conjures up frightful images of controversial characters being barbecued for their beliefs. It smacks of intolerance. The very word dogmatic is perceived as being intolerant. But as Chesterton says, man is the animal who makes dogmas. You could say that man is a religious animal. There's something ironic about the ideal of tolerance or so-called religious freedom. It has done more to suppress religion than has any persecution. It has left us not only afraid to debate about our beliefs, it has made us afraid even to discuss them. As Chesterton says, we now talk about the weather and call it the complete liberty of all creeds. This strange silence about religion leaves the impression that religion is not important.
There is one thing that is infinitely more absurd and unpractical than burning a man for his philosophy. This is the habit of saying that his philosophy does not matter. And this is done universally in the 20th century. A man's opinion on Botticelli matters. His opinion on all things does not matter.
Chesterton says that we can't get away from the fact that we have a general view of existence, whether we like it or not. And it affects and involves everything we say or do, whether we like it or not. And our general view of things is based on our ultimate view of things. Religion is never irrelevant. It not only deals with ultimate things, but everything else. It is important to note that Chesterton's book is not an attack, but a defense of the ancient truths that are under attack by modern heretics. Chesterton claims to have gained a deeper appreciation of the Christian faith through the simple exercise of defending it.
We who are Christians never knew the great philosophic common sense which inheres in that mystery until the anti-Christian writers pointed it out to us.
Common sense. The Christian faith is common sense. Heresy, it turns out, is usually a distinct lack of common sense. A heresy is at best a half-truth, but usually even less than that. A heresy is a fragment of the truth that is exaggerated at the expense of the rest of the truth. For instance, freedom is good, but that doesn't mean obedience is bad. Sobriety is good, but that doesn't mean wine is bad. Sacrifice is good, but that doesn't mean pleasure is bad. Reason is good, but that doesn't mean faith is bad. In the Catholic faith, we recognize that a heresy is not so much a false doctrine as an incomplete doctrine. It has rejected part of the truth and is representing what's left over as the whole truth. But what the heretic usually ends up doing is attacking the greater truth. The reason why Chesterton is an apostle of common sense is because he is a complete thinker. The reason he could recognize heresy is because he could expose incomplete thinking. Surprisingly, Chesterton wrote Heretics before he became a Catholic. Although he defends the Christian faith generally, he's already defending Catholic doctrine specifically. The completeness of his thought is already apparent. For instance, he gives a very Catholic response to the heresy that strong societies can only be established by strong men.
When Christ, at a symbolic moment, was establishing his great society, he chose for its cornerstone neither the brilliant Paul nor the mystic John, but a shuffler, a snob, a coward, in a word, a man, Peter. And upon this rock he has built his church, and the gates of hell have not prevailed against it. All the empires and the kingdoms have failed because of this inherent and continual weakness, that they were founded by strong men and upon strong men. but this one thing: the historic Christian Church was founded on a weak man, and for that reason it is indestructible. For no chain is stronger than its weakest link.
The so-called heretics that Chesterton writes about in this book were his philosophical and political opponents, people like George Bernard Shaw and H.G. Wells. Chesterton treats them with fairness and geniality. He points out what is good in their argument before pointing out what is fatally wrong with their argument. His geniality is as great as his genius. But we should not underestimate his courage and his confidence. He is, after all, going up against the leading thinkers of the day and telling them that they're wrong and why they are wrong. The list of personalities includes Shaw and Wells and other well-known names, along with some names that are probably no longer familiar. But all the heresies are familiar, especially to the modern world, which praises science and hygiene and success and progress. These are all very well and good, but they have been elevated at the expense of larger truths, such as faith, tradition, humility, and lasting ideals. These larger truths lie at the heart of Christianity. Chesterton says that Christianity better understands man's needs than any modern philosophy or economic system or political scheme or social policy. Christianity may be an ideal, but the Christian mystic, says Chesterton, is the most practical man of all. He does the right thing for the right reason. The heretic may occasionally do the right thing for the wrong reason, but doing things for the right reason, says Chesterton, is always jollier.
A young man may keep himself from vice by continually thinking of disease, or he may keep himself from it by continually thinking of the Virgin Mary. There may be question about which method is the more reasonable, or even about which is the more efficient, but surely there can be no question about which is the more wholesome.
Chesterton is usually able to use the heretics' own arguments against them. As he says, it was the anti-Christian writers who pointed out all the common sense in Christianity. In the same way, it is often the agnostics and the scoffers who provide some of the best evidence for the very existence of God. For example, says Chesterton, blasphemy is based on belief. The blasphemer cannot achieve any artistic effect unless he is at heart a believer. If anyone doubts this, says Chesterton, let him sit down and seriously try to think some blasphemous thoughts about Thor. Likewise, he shows that the skepticism of the skeptic is his own undoing. The agnostic, who cannot make up his mind about anything, will still maintain that he can see the good in everything because of his open-mindedness. But Chesterton says it is ludicrous to suppose that the more skeptical we are, the more we see good in everything. Rather, the more we are certain what good is, the more we shall see good in everything. We have to have some conviction of the truth in order to see the good. But it can't be an idiosyncratic truth. It has to be a shared truth. In other words, it has to be common sense. It's no great praise to say of some eccentric intellectual, he knows his own mind. Chesterton says that's like saying he blows his own nose. Let's take a look at how Chesterton deals with a few of the modern heresies. First up, progress. How can anybody be against progress? Well, the problem with progress, Chesterton points out, is that it doesn't mean anything. You cannot have progress unless you have established what your goal is. Progress itself cannot be a goal. Progress cannot be an ideal. Chesterton says the word is simply a comparative of which we have not settled the superlative.